Guys, what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek, otherwise known as TWIG, the flagship of stupidity. I am your main host, Mike the Birdman Dodd, but I'm also joined on this, well, we're going to start things off on a serious note, by the guy in Kitchener.
Yes, Alex.
That's right, guys. So, as you can gather, if you've been following my social media, be it Birdman Dodd on Twitter or Facebook, well, I've had some pretty serious stuff happen over the last few weeks. As you may have gathered, some members of my family last week in particular are having some difficulties which will affect the long-term situation in my family. However, last Wednesday afternoon, I got some more news that hit my personal circle of family. I don't know whether that's the right term for it. I'm just going to run with it. My grandfather, the guy who raised me as his son, John Dodd, passed away 3 o'clock Friday afternoon. He was 94 years old, which obviously he lived a very full life. But yeah, to give a very brief overview of this, because I've talked about this on previous podcasts, but I have not totally fleshed it out. So my grandparents, Marie and John, adopted me from my mother, Kim, back in the early 80s. I was born in 1981. I'm not even sure of the circumstances surrounding my adoption. But either way, Marie and John raised me until I was 18, and then I will say I left home. And John was always a very supportive member of my family. I mean, there wasn't exactly, oh, golly gee, son, let's go outside and throw a ball around. He wasn't that type of father. But he would always take me fishing. He'd always talk with me whenever he would drive me places. He was a chauffeur for a lot of high school for me because I didn't get my driver's license till I was in college. But he was always around for me, and he kind of set the standard for me in terms of how I would approach a lot of the women in my life, for better or for worse. He always taught me to be a good man to them. Don't be a prick. Obviously, don't do anything that would hurt them. And I tried to follow that example as best I could. To relay some stories about John, one of the more memorable things that I remember about John, I was in our car with one of my girlfriends at the time. This was before Blair and I got married, obviously. And my father, John, had forgotten that my girlfriend was in the car. So he decides to speak a little bit more blue. And he sees this attractive woman walking down the street. And he says to me, and he had this very particular way of speaking. He says, Michael, if she swings her hips anymore, she'll take out the fucking lamppost. I just about died laughing. My girlfriend in the back seat of the car was just like, wait, what? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. It took me totally by surprise. I also remember my dad driving on the wrong side of the road at one particular time.
The question is, when he drives on the wrong side of the road, is it the wrong side of the road for him?
Yes, because he was always been raised in Canada. So I was like, Jesus Christ, you're on the wrong side of the fucking road.
No, I meant he's like, it's not the wrong side if I'm driving there.
It was weird. But yeah, so John and he was always there for me, like in always some capacity. He was always supporting me. He would often be there for advice. And like I said, we did have some disagreements at times, as any family does. Unfortunately, the last time I saw John would be just, I can't remember if it was before or after my wedding. Pretty sure it was afterwards. We didn't part under the best of circumstances. He was in a really, really bad situation between him and my mother. They eventually separated after like 30, 40 years of marriage. It was not a good situation. There was no love in that marriage whatsoever, and that's unfortunate to say. But eventually, he did get taken out of that situation and stayed with the son from his first marriage, his son Phil. And he had a pretty pretty good life. However, by that time, my father was suffering from Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and he didn't remember who I was. So I was advised to stay away lest I upset him, and I honored that agreement. Occasionally, memories and mentions of me would slip through. I was told he remembered me when my uncle, Phil, told him about what happened with my amputation. And he was sorry to hear that. But I always made sure to call once a month or so just to check in, see how Dad was doing. Because our family has never been big on communication. So when he passed away last Wednesday, I was told Phil was there in the room with him. And he just went in a sleep. He'd been suffering from some kind of a lung infection. And he went very peacefully. Phil was holding John's hand as it happened, and you just knew that he was gone. And he went on a really nice summer day, because obviously today being the first day of fall, he went as he deserved to. One of my girlfriends from before contacted me, Ashley. He was the one who, him, John, and myself were probably the relationship he saw the most outside of me and Blair. This was when I was very young. When I was 18, I was with Ashley till I was like 20 something. And Ashley had a lot of love for John, and she said to me, and this is probably about the best way she could have memorialized him. She said he went out like he deserved, peacefully in a sleep and on a beautiful summer day. And he taught you, Michael, compassion and love. And I really can't argue that point. I learned a lot from that man, though not maybe the things you would expect, like, hey, here's how to swing a hammer, here's how to fix something. I learned a lot by looking and examining things through him, if not by example, by asking questions as I grew up. Because I'm not afraid to say it, my household was not very loving. Very cold, very much we were roommates cohabitating the same space. I'm sure there was love there, but it was very reserved, very unspoken. And I guess that just comes from that particular generation, or maybe just my particular set of circumstances. So, with all that being said, for the next 2 weeks at least, I'm going to be submitting some reviews for Alex to put in the show. And I will be taking a leave of absence from TWIG, at least until early October, just to kind of take my own time to grieve, and just, it's been a hell of a couple weeks. So, that being said, let's do the show I was planning on doing a little while ago, and let's kind of pick up the energy, pick up the pace here. And what have you been up to, Alex?
Okay, well,
good luck following that.
Well, this past week I had that press event with Roku that I put the little report on the new devices that are coming out, the new streaming services from them. We should be receiving review units to check out. I was told when they're available. So it's one of those, no definitive timeline on that, but that was interesting. I got to go to downtown Toronto and check out a pretty swanky hotel, and it was an interesting little smaller, event. It wasn't like a huge press event where there's like tons and tons of people. It was more like they're there and there's one or two of us at a time, and you're there for about an hour to talk about what's coming up, which was kind of neat. And then I also went back a few days later, visited some family, stayed with my grandmother, and used that time to go and record a Terrible Warriors session with Justin at his studio. And that's the Ross Rifles game. We got to try a game that is pre-Kickstarter. By the time it's released, the Kickstarter should be up. And after that, I stuck around and we did an episode of Cambridge Chronicles, played a game called For the Queen, which is pretty cool. So that's been, my busy back and forth from Toronto week and sort of getting prepped for next weekend, where I'll be at the Tri-City SuperCon in Kitchener, where I've got press access, so I'll be covering that.
Excellent. So you'll have to go stop in to see TWIG friend of the show, Mark Meir.
Yes, I should. There is. I've been looking. I finally got the itinerary. There's a panel with a couple Power Rangers, a panel on Dark Matter, the TV show. There's a few actors that were in that. It's a smaller con, but there's some quality talent there.
Absolutely. So look forward to that next week, kind of as a super special, as opposed to the regular show that Alex will be hosting.
Yeah.
I should have reviews for Gears of War 5, as I've been meaning to get through it. I've been playing the multiplayer more than the campaign, and multiplayer is fucking awesome. Storyline, couldn't tell you. We should probably do that.
But that's something that tell you that if the strength of the multiplayer is good, and we know that Gears has always been also a good storyline game. If the multiplayer is there, then you know the story should be there too.
Exactly. So I'm expecting it to be just as good. I also should have a review for The Walking Dead, the complete series. I know the definitive edition just got released a couple weeks ago, and I'm fully expecting to bawl like a baby, because the first episode of that with Clementine, if you know what I'm talking about, the decision you have to make at the end of that particular episode is absolutely heartbreaking, and the performance given is probably one of the best in video games I've ever heard. So that being said, we got a lot to talk about this week. In addition to the reviews, we have Devil's Hunt, Cat Quest 2, and A Bucket of Blood, which is a Roger Corman flick. We're going to talk about what happened this weekend at Area 51, where they were expecting 30,000 people. How many people showed up? Well, the answer may just surprise you. We're also going to talk about what's coming up for E3 and its proposal next year from the ESA. We're also going to talk about a French court is telling Valve, well, you may have to change how you do business in our particular country. And of course, the weird news where we've talked about bull spunk on this show. So let's talk about weirder shit. And her own words, not mine, Bridget the Midget is in the news. We'll talk about that later here, right here on TWIG, the flagship of stupidity. And here is a review from Alex.
A game that had been on my radar since I saw a trailer about a year or so ago was Devil's Hunt. Now, what is Devil's Hunt? Well, it's a PC game created by Polish developers, and I almost maybe in my mind to capitalize on the success of Polish media like The Witcher. This is based on a book series that I believe has 3 books, and I, to be honest, wasn't super enthralled by the story. I did like the visuals of this game. It's got almost a Capcom Resident Evil-esque look to the characters and designs, maybe a little Devil May Cry-ish, but it does have some pretty good lighting, atmospheric effects. Especially since this is a PC title with a fair amount of polish in the graphics. That being said, I encountered a significant amount of technical errors and glitches to the point where it was actually crashing. I had to play it on 2 different machines, and in doing so, I'm going to have to say I can't recommend the game in its current state, simply because there are too many technical issues that are hindering the gameplay, that I couldn't really enjoy the story. A lot of crashes, black screens that would just hang the computer even, crashing pretty much every time I used it. It's too bad, considering there's a lot in this game that looks interesting, but when 3/4 of your gameplay time are basically just chewed up with technical issues, having to restart or change things. And this is not an issue with my hardware setup. My hardware setup works fine with 99.99% of games that I'm playing. It seems to be issues with this game not being ready. It doesn't appear in my mind to be a complete finished game, which is unfortunate because I did like what I was seeing so far. But at the same time, this game really should have used another 6 months, maybe even a year or two to bake in the oven, because right as it is right now, it's not complete.
Need a new weapon in your battle against evil? Check out LibrisArcana.com for Canada's premier RPG dice subscription service. For only $7.97 Canadian with free shipping. You can get a new complete set of role-playing dice from D4s to D20s delivered straight to your door. Dice themes are new each month and can be anything your mind can imagine and beyond. Visit LibrisArcana.com and subscribe for only $7.97 Canadian with free shipping, and be prepared to open up new worlds of adventure.
News on the march!
And welcome back to TWIG, the flagship of stupidity. I'm Mike the Birdman Dodd, joined with Alex the producer. Let's get things started. Well, if you've been following the internet this past summer, one of the more popular meme and shitposting events was Let's Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us. Where basically, if you Naruto run at the gates of Area 51, presumably you can outrun bullets. Well, they were expecting an outcome of 30,000 people, though over 2 million people said they were going to show up to this. Well, only a paltry, I think at most 150 showed up at the gates of Area 51. And, well, all sorts of really weird cosplay and signs. One of the more memorable videos floating around about this event was a group chant where they were chanting "Clap them cheeks" at one point. 2 people did get arrested, however. One of them was busted for breaching the perimeter, aka they just jumped over the gate and crossed over in the Area 51. And the other guy got busted for public urination. However, in addition to the Area 51 shenanigans that were happening this weekend, there was events happening in other neighboring cities, or not cities, towns, I guess you could call them, like Rachel, Nevada at the Little Ailey Inn. There was another one which was more focused around UFO enthusiasts and whatnot. One of them actually had electronic DJ producer Paul Oakenfield showed up. He played to a crowd of about 50 people. So this is a far cry from people who said they were going to come, like David Duchovny said he was going to come. Keanu Reeves said he was going to come. I think Guy Fieri at one point said he was going to be involved.
It's like, well, the problem was it fell apart when they made an official announcement saying, "Oh, we're not doing it." Well, it's like, well, then who's going to show up?
Well, yeah, it's weird because it got so corporate at one point. Matty Roberts, the guy who originally set this thing up, I guess he had some kind of a deal going on with the Little Alien Inn, and then he said, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." He's going to do something in Las Vegas. I want to say, I think it's already happened or did happen. I don't know. And
that tells you enough right there that nobody knows what was happening.
Well, yeah, there were 3 events claiming to be the raid event, and then one of them, Matty Roberts, said, "Yes, these people are not allowed to use my likeness. They can't use this, that, and the other thing." And I guess he sold out the Bud Light. He's planning on taking this on the road as the Area 51 experience to different nightclubs and bars. Okay. Because I guess Bud Light made all this alien beer, and I guess, well, what the fuck are they going to do with it?
It sounds like this is one of those cases of the person who said this and planned this has never actually run any event ever, and then panicked when real money was being thrown around.
Oh yeah, because at one point certain counties were saying, we do not have the infrastructure for this. So if you are coming out, bring food, water, and gas, as there is no gas for 75 miles. Although one of the events had a bunch of RVs show up, and it was literally like a little music festival, and it turned out okay. It wasn't Firefest 2.0, and that's what the Matty Roberts statement, I'm pretty sure, said about it, if I'm remembering this correctly. So yeah, I'm surprised that many people showed up, between 75 and 150. There are some Twitter accounts online that show the event pretty much as it went down, but it was pretty well behaved. One of the sites that I watch, or one of the YouTube channels I watch, is a site called Internet Today, and they said this kind of feels like how Burning Man started before it became like ridiculous. So I doubt this will. If this happens again at this time next year, I'll be really surprised. But
it just seems like something that hit a boiling point and then fizzled out.
Yeah, because that's asking an awful lot. Although, considering how many, because Las Vegas and Los Angeles are not that far apart, I'm surprised more people just didn't come out of curiosity. I actually had a friend of mine go. A friend of mine went down to the event, and she got a couple pictures with a couple of different cosplayers and people with signs. So good on her for going to that, because that's an experience. That's something you can chalk up to your meme fucking bingo card there. So yeah, that's pretty strange. So Area 51, I guess we didn't clap them cheeks after all. ET is still locked up, and I'm pretty sure deep inside Area 51, where the government keeps all their secrets, the agreement between Sony and Marvel is also kept in there. And, well, we'll never see it now. So, moving on to my next story. This one is fucking stupid, and I've got different thoughts on this, so allow me to break it down. So the ESA is proposing rebranding E3 2020 as a fan, media, and influencer festival in a leaked document that has been obtained by several different outlets. And what they want to do is kind of pivot away from having it be more of a press event and more and less of an industry trade show to being something more equivalent to Gamescom, considering how successful they are. And you look at events like PAX, because they're starting to get more and more showcases and reveals at those events. So what the ESA wants to do is invite more celebrities and influencers out. And they also want to kind of bring you a digital experience as well, which I think is actually kind of a cool idea. Basically, demos that are on the show floor. They may have a way to stream those out to the cloud so you can play some of these games at home during E3. That I think is kind of cool. But what I don't like is how they're kind of changing it, because they've seen attendance has dropped significantly. Not as much as it was back in 2008, where they moved it up to, well, I want to say like Santa Monica. And the attendance bottomed out. This year was, I think, 66,000, which is 3,000 down from the previous year. And they want to divide E3 into entertainment hubs. So you go to like 5 different areas or whatever.
I can tell you right now, like, oh, their attendance is down. I can tell you now exactly why their attendance was down. It was no Sony there. Like,
no Sony, no Nintendo.
There are people because again, this is no longer really just a pure trade show. There are journalists and people that would go that are only Sony fanboys, and it's easy to believe that there's 1,000 people that would be like, no Sony, I'm not bothering. And then there's a couple other 1,000 people that might not go, because if not everybody is going to be represented there, why don't they go to an event where they all are represented?
Well, it's weird, because some of the things I've been watching on this, I've watched a couple of videos on it, and it's like E3's only there out of tradition now, because you look at the Nintendo Direct, you look at the state of play for Sony, only Microsoft and certain third-party publishers like Bethesda and Electronic Arts really showed things off.
They showed off one new game like that. They showed off
Jedi Fallen Order, yeah.
Like, and it's basically become the event where Ubisoft, Square, and Microsoft show off everything, and then Bethesda finds a new way to be a laughingstock. Yeah,
like there's just another thing that they want to do is they want to sell marketing data too, because the one thing that they want to do while you're waiting in line to, let's say you're in line waiting to play, I don't know, the new Assassin's Creed or something. They want to bring you Q entertainment, which is, I don't even know whether I'm saying that word right, but it sounds fucked up. They want to entertain you in line. They also want an app to track where you are on the show floor.
Well, and if they want to do that, well, I mean, they want to do that, maybe a good step would be not leaking all of the attendance information.
Well, yeah, I mean, the ESA, I mean, looking at their history as the quote-unquote vocal voice of the video game industry is a little bit questionable at best. Obviously, with the big leaks they've had in the last couple months, even previous to that, they've had some problems in the United States when there was that big thing called SOPA and PIPA about copyright infringement, and it was so broadly written, stuff like that. The ESA backed that and then tried to backpedal when it was pretty obvious that it was going to fail. And I want to thank that particular insight, thanks to the guy, Jim. Help me out, his name. What's his last name again?
Which one are you talking about? I don't know who you mean.
The Jimquisition guy. Help me out. Jim Sterling.
Yes.
Jim Sterling.
I see it.
Yeah.
I was. There's a bunch of other gyms that were popping in my head, and none of those are British.
But yeah, so he kind of pointed that out today. But yeah, it's like the ESA is struggling to stay relevant. I know, with attendance numbers dropping, and everybody says they want to go to E3, and E3 for a long time was considered to be gamer Christmas. But you look at how many more people go to Gamescom. How many more people go to Tokyo Game Show?
Between the two of those, it's 10 times the population. And then if you wanted to go like in the States, as far as a pure trade show, a lot of these game companies do show off their physical accessories and stuff at CES. So you don't really need to show off your games anymore, because there's self-publishing options. A lot of times it would be an indie publisher or indie developer would go there, show off a game they developed, and then it was to sell to a publisher that was already at the show. So you'd show off your game to pick up. But now you can publish on your own. With Nintendo and Xbox allowing the indie publisher initiatives they've had in the last 10 years, there's really no reason for an indie publisher to try to sell their game to another company anymore. There's really no reason to show anything, because everything being digital means anybody can put out any game. There's no reason at all to really show that off. And accessories wise, what you more likely to do, like it used to be like, I got to show off my new controller so that Walmart will order it. That's not how it works anymore, because of how fast the internet moves and how much variety there is on Amazon and places. You really don't need large companies to buy, or sign deals with your stuff. They'll just take anything. You know what I mean? They're not. Gaming has gotten so big that they don't have to be selective in the products they carry.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's weird. For years, I used to think of going to E3 as this big deal. But the longer I've been doing this, the more I've been questioning it. Is it really worth it? I haven't been excited for an E3 in years. I mean, when we did our E3 special this year, we said this is the one just before a console generation or a new console generation started. There wasn't the wow factor outside of Cyberpunk and Final Fantasy.
There was the anticipation of, is Sony going to do something, even though they said they're not. Like, are they going to counter program? Are we going to see more of the Xbox? Like it. The last time I can think of there's exciting moments. There were really good game announcements, but as far as the waiting on the edge of your seat for what's coming next. The last time that happened was when the PS4 and Xbox were announced, and we had the pipe bomb, of Sony at the last minute changing their entire presentation to basically counter program Xbox, and that's what, the 2013 or 2014.
I'm not entirely sure.
We're at least 5 years since we've had, a true something that made the news. That can you remember anything that was truly memorable from the last 5 years?
Fallout 4 was pretty memorable.
Is that 5 years? Yeah.
Fallout 4 has been out since 2016, I think.
Revealing that, maybe also revealing that Final Fantasy remake was real.
Yep.
But as far as anything from the actual high, the console makers, we already knew, the Switch wasn't even announced at this. Nintendo announced it on their own. The Xbox doesn't show anything. We already knew they were going to. They announced a couple days before the show. By the way, we're talking about our new console. so there was no surprise or wow factor.
Mm-hmm.
So like and also the ESA, like what they have to worry about too is they were put together as well as a lobby group. They're the ones that put together the like they're connected to the ESRB and everything with the ratings board. Like the bigger story here will be what happens when the government takes control of what you can and can't put in games, when it's like the loot boxes, that sort of thing. These industry lobby groups are getting to the point now where they're losing their ability to self-manage because they basically haven't done fuck all in 20 years.
Like they basically exist for the sake of existing and to push agendas.
They exist for the sake of existing, and so they can receive copious fees from companies that want to publish their games, and they have to go through them.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree that there's something a little funky going on, especially when it comes to government regulation and loot boxes, because the ESRB agrees and the ESA agrees that, for example, in NBA 2K20, there's a straight out fucking casino in it. And that's cool for children. Yet the UK government is like, no, that's not.
Same
That's
with the
not cool.
Netherlands, and I think it's Denmark as well. We've sort of been sitting on the edge because we're stricter on these things than they are in the States. But the issue will be anything that happens in Canada will be used by the Americans and by politicians down there as a method of like, Canada's got like 10% of the population of the States, but we have very similar laws when it comes to these sorts of things. So it's almost like they're looking at us so that what we do will set precedent for them, but we're looking at them because if we do something ahead of them that doesn't work out well, it could have ramifications for us in the market. So it's sort of like who's going to go first? Are you going to jump first? Are you going to go first? It's going to happen. There's going to be a point where loot boxes and surprise mechanics, whatever you want to call it, become fully like not only in like mature rated games or something, and it will mean that people are like, well, those other games will go away. It's like not necessarily if they still sell well.
People like money, yeah. I mean, one of the shittiest things that happened, this year that I noticed, this was a shitty fucking move because I recommended this game, and then they pull this bullshit about a month and a half later. Crash Team Racing, fantastic game, had no microtransactions. Until about a month and a half later when all the game copies had been printed and all the review scores had been out. That's fucking underhanded. Yeah,
that's the other thing too. Or you have situations, Borderlands, where you get the review copy is very specifically designed and built for reviewers, and then immediately after the reviews are out, the game build changes. That should be illegal. And in fact, it's only a class action lawsuit away from being illegal. So it has to be one time where something becomes so egregious that, like, it has to be a case where loot boxes are no longer allowed on games under, mature rated or something. And then the review copies come out and the game is fine. There's no loot boxes or anything. And then it gets approved, and then loot boxes get thrown in after it comes out, and the game's only rated for teens or something. It's going to have something where it's very egregious that they have to be forced to change their habits. And to be honest, it's basically two companies. It's Activision and EA that are
although Ubisoft is not.
They're not pay to win.
They're when you look at their Assassin's Creed games and how they offer you time savers, that's a different thing. But it's in the same vein.
They're single player modes. Like that's a different thing. The other thing is they've not done anything underhanded when they show it, like to the same degree. Like EA, I do like some of their games, but let's be honest. 90% of the games they've come out with in the last 5 to 10 years have been kind of crap, or very underwhelming. And it's not anything against the developers. The developers are very talented, good people. It's just clear
what comes from on high.
It's clear that they're just being told crap out generic crap out crap that people will buy because stupid people buy crap, And it's like, our audience is dumb and they'll eat up anything we give them as long as we tell them they have to buy it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, and that is the feel that they push off. Like, I'm very hesitant about the new Star Wars game because I just get this feeling we're not going to get what we were expecting unless they're doing this as a bait and switch where it's like, hey, look, here's an amazing title, but then every other title that year is going to be crap.
I can't even name any other game that's coming out this year outside of the Madden that's an EA thing other than Star Wars.
NHL.
Oh yeah, whoopee doo.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate because you're paying for incremental roster changes and maybe a few changes to physics.
Yeah, and Activision, they're the weird one where it's hit or miss. It depends on the studio putting things out, but at the same time, it's not even deceptive marketing. It's the kind of
their fucking model for COD last year was fucking abusive.
Well, I was going to say
Seasons Pass on top of the Battle Pass, on top of loot boxes, on top of shit you could buy.
They're predatory tactics to prey on the weak-willed, and that's not good.
I wouldn't use the term weak-willed because some people genuinely have gambling addiction or spending problems.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. Some people that don't have the ability to control the
addiction cycle. Yes, they're preying on it.
Yeah, or preying especially on the young, the easily influenced, and to that extent, I think things are going to have to change because what they're going to find is if they lose Europe, they lose everybody for their sports titles for the most part, other than Madden.
Well, yeah, because if FIFA, I would imagine, is probably mostly European Union.
Yeah.
Very little. I'd be curious to see those
FIFA and
those
Pro
actual
Evolution,
numbers.
Yeah, though between those two, but even then, they say, oh, it's not gambling. Okay, well then why is it that all these companies internally refer to the people that spend the most money as whales? That's a gambling term.
And even now, I know certain companies have to disclose their loot boxes percentage in certain particular countries. I know for a while, this is an Activision title, Activision Blizzard. They Overwatch loot boxes or something weren't being sold in certain countries. So I don't know.
And it's I don't know. To me, it's bullshit. Like I've never bought into those things. If it's free, it's free. I'll play it or I'll get the loot boxes or whatever. But we're getting to a point where if you're going to behave like a casino, you have to act like a casino. And the idea of it's not gambling because it's not something you can take into the real world and you can't do this and this. It's like no. It's the mechanic, the addiction, the rush, the blatant, not false advertising, the enticing advertising that lies to you and tries to prey upon your I guess inhibitions with certain things. It's like, you know what, I almost would respect gambling more than I respect loot boxes because they're upfront with what they are. Yeah,
and at least you know the odds. So anyway, we're going to move away from this story and we're going to talk, continuing with legal stuff. This one's particularly interesting. So back in 2015, Valve got sued by French consumer organization UFCQ Quasar. Pretty sure I'm mispronouncing that. But either way.
I hear it's a really tasty, tasty pastry.
So these guys were going to sue them. Because they didn't, one of their biggest concerns was Steam doesn't allow users to resell their games. Well, 4 years later, a French court has ruled in the UFC's favor. Valve does plan to appeal. So, if Valve's appeal fails, the ruling stands to have ramifications not just in France but across the European Union. Specifically, the court didn't find Valve's defense that Steam is a subscription service compelling. As a result, the court declared that users should be allowed to resell Steam games. So just kind of reading into this, if Valve refuses to change its rules and post the court's decision to Steam within a month, it will have to pay a fine of up to 3,000 euros per day for up to 6 months. Valve plans to appeal the ruling, say we disagree with the decision of the Paris Court of First Instance and we will appeal it. The decision will have no effect on Steam while the case is on appeal. I've always wondered why you couldn't resell digital games. I mean, it's a weird kind of gray market because you look at something like, what the fuck was that? I can't. G2G, which sold it's gray market games.
Do you know where it comes down to? Because they're saying you're not buying a game, you're paying for a single user license. And those are that it dates back to the software world of the 80s and early 90s. Because you're not buying a product, you're leasing a license for a set period of time. That set period of time is usually indefinite until they decide to remove it. So it comes from that world. But it's the same idea of when you open a game, let's say the game was defective. Remember back in the day when stores would say you can't return the game even if it's defective? And it's like
vaguely, yeah,
that's illegal. But they would try to do that. They said stores would say we can't accept it because the game companies and same with movie companies would not refund your money if it was a defective thing. Even if there was a scratch on the disc, you'd be like, I can't play it. Some stores
it's open.
Yeah, it's open media. I don't care. It's open media. It's non-usable, and this is a new product, and you can't do that. Like they cannot do that. So it was ruled they couldn't do that. All they could do is replace it with the same product and then blah, blah, blah. And they had to open it and give it to you. There's a whole bunch of bullshit that isn't an issue now because Amazon takes care of it. Like Amazon basically changed the entire market for that. It's like, oh, it's not working? Here's your refund or here's another one. Send it back to us. Like they just didn't care. And it's a holdover from like the movie studios era. Like their idea, they tried to treat home media as one-use items. Oh, you bought your Blu-ray or you bought your DVD or your VHS. Okay, well, technically you didn't buy the VHS. You bought the right to watch the VHS. And digital is what made that a reality of where they could control that. Because remember, they hated, rental stores. Even though rental stores paid, like, if I paid $20 for a VHS, the rental store paid $250. And they still hated them. And it's like, because they're so, you know what it is? It's greed. It's just pure greed. We want to make as much as possible, and if you want to, you can't return this game. Blah, blah blah. They don't want to do it because they don't want to deal with the logistics of they've paid you. How are they going to get the money back from the company? It would mean that with games, when it comes to like refunds and stuff, it would mean that there has to be a buffer on when you can get paid. So they can't just give you the money right away, or the money has to go into an account where they can also debit it back to them. And like with Valve and all these digital, digital storefronts, they just don't want to deal with actually having to work for a living. They just want to have the marketplace open and just money. But what do you mean? We have to work for it? We actually have to follow laws and abide by things? They don't want to do that because let's be honest, Valve was not they weren't a storefront. They weren't a business that wasn't what their forte was. They've now pivoted to that. Like they're never going to make another game franchise again. It's just not. They might own a company that does, but they're never going to make one again.
Like, I don't understand why they couldn't have tackled this problem early on. Because if they had like a Steam marketplace where, hey, you want to buy there's a used digital game and just have like percentages. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm over.
No, they don't want that because they saw digital as a way of finally controlling the aftermarket. Guess what? Oh, you want to play the game? Pay full price. Oh, you want to play it used? Fuck you. You don't get to do that. We want all of your money. And to be honest, there are people that are like, that's driving piracy. There are people that will never pay full price for a game. And if they can't get the game for half price or buy it from a friend for a couple dollars, they will pirate it and say, fuck you, you get nothing. And that is something that is it's a mindset that a lot of it's mostly American companies don't understand. They think of every used game sold is
as loss
or a pirated game as a loss. You've taken from my pocket. No, those are sales that you were never going to get, and they don't understand that. Oh no, they're lost sales. No, they are sales you were never ever ever going to get, because if the people were going to buy it, they would have bought it. So and that mentality in Europe is different. They have different beliefs on copyright, different beliefs on things, fair prices, setting. They're much more modern. Like the way that it works in the States is still very rooted in like 1800s mentality of capitalism. And it doesn't really work that way. You want to make money? Like you said, Michael, make a secondary market. Okay, you can sell your used game. Let's say you can sell it for 50 cents or on the dollar, recuperate your cost, and on that 50 cents of the dollar, 25% of what you get is goes back as a licensing fee to the creator. And it's like, oh, well, they're going to lose profit that way. No, because the people that are buying it used are not people that were going to buy it new in the first place and probably never were going to buy it. So that's me getting off my soapbox. And if you want to argue that there's people out there want to argue that there's differences, or no, that's not the case. It's just no. And anytime you close off the market and close off any possibility of it, or if you try to herd people into a funnel, people are going to try to find a way to jump ship and do it a different way.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you. So moving on to something a little less depressing in the video game world, this is actually this took me by surprise. So a couple weeks ago, SNK announced there's going to be a Neo Geo Arcade Stick Pro, and it comes built with 20 built-in games. And nobody knew what the hell they were until now. So this thing looks like your typical 8-button fight stick. I don't know what type of stick or buttons there are. Presumably super high quality. I presume probably like Sanwa and Hori buttons, or Sanwa buttons anyway. So the games you get is King of Fighters 95 through 2002, Fatal Fury Special, Fatal Fury 3, Garou Mark of the Wolves, Samurai Showdown 2 through 5, Art of Fighting, World Heroes 2, World Heroes 2 Jet, World Heroes Perfect, Ninja Masters, The Last Blade 2, and Kizuna Encounter. This is a fucking fantastic lineup. Like, if you like SNK fighters, like Neo Geo era fighters, like I used to play a shit ton of World Heroes. I'm so in. I'm kind of glad they don't have King of the Monsters in there, but you know what? Considering you're getting all these alliterations of King of Fighters, that's really awesome. It would have been neat if maybe they could have did Capcom versus SNK as like a bonus game, but I can see maybe due to licensing, considering Capcom has their own fight stick. I don't think it's out yet. I'm pretty sure it comes out soon-ish. But it's pretty nice.
The only thing I question is that is there a market for it?
Well,
only
I guess,
only in that, like, those games, we're just talking about piracy. Those games have been pirated on like emulators and clone boards, main machines longer than any other system ever. And the people that want them, don't they already have those?
Yeah, because you'd think you'd have a decent stick to play these things on if you're playing them at home, or hell, you can own a Neo Geo cab for under $500.
Like, aren't a lot of these on like those retrocades and stuff like that are officially licensed? We're at a point now where you're going to have to give a lot more than that if you're going to ask like $100 or more.
See, if I was Neo Geo, I'm glad they included all the fighters. The fact that it's an 8-button fight stick, that's cool. But if it's Neo Geo, where's my Metal Slug? Where's my Bubble Bobble? Or not Bubble Bobble, Buster Groove. Where's that? And those are relatively easy licenses to get.
Yeah, like I feel like they're fragmenting themselves, thinking they can make more money. It's cool, and I'm all for it. Like, you're right, it's a very good lineup. But I'm wondering, like this is the kind of thing where I'm like, I think the Turbo graphics will sell better than this. Because
I don't know.
It's so niche. Like, the people that are into these games are so into them, they want original hardware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, I'm thinking it's going to sell well to their respective communities. I imagine this will only be an online exclusive, or you'll have to go into GameStop or EB Games to pre-order this, but I don't think you'll see too many of these in Canada, truth be told. I mean, I would like one, but I'm not killing myself. It's not as cool as the Capcom one.
It's on our radar, so I will look at, between our contacts with people. If there's a possibility of getting one, we'll try to get one. But
yeah, because I would love to play, especially I'd want to see how well it's emulated. And if it's done by S&K, I would expect no less than perfect.
Yeah, like I don't think I've mentioned it before, but I got confirmation I'll be getting an Evercade to try out. That's the mini Game Boy style console coming out where it takes, physical cartridges, and they've licensed a lot of arcade titles. So like I'm almost thinking like those fighting games and all that would almost be better as a handheld device. Because anybody that wants a big screen, like I just think the problem with emulating or getting arcade style ones is the people that really want like those replica arcade machines, like who is it putting out those ones that they have put out, like the Street Fighter one,
the arcade one up, I think they're called.
Yeah, like that is more in line with those fans than this.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you.
And I'm not trying to talk it down. Like, it's a really cool device. I'm just worried that they're going to stretch them. I'm worried that if it doesn't do as well as they're hoping, that they'll just scrap putting out anything else.
Well, I'm honestly surprised how much the replica market is what I'm going to call it is doing. The fact that we've had so many mini consoles has gone over better than I thought, outside of the resounding failure of the PlayStation Mini. Although you look at the arguable super success of the Sega Genesis Mini.
Yeah,
that's the best one on the market.
Yeah, I got that shortly before going down to visit family past weekend. Plugged in and was trying it, and it was good. Now, you remember people were saying that there was input lag and there was some little bit of audio slowdown? You want to know something that fixes that? Don't use the built-in power adapter. It's only a 1 amp cell phone charger, and apparently it needs a little bit more juice than that to run at full speed.
Is this a commonly known fix?
Yes. There's been a few reviews and a few teardowns online that talk about it. And I didn't even use the built-in adapter. I had one of those for all my micro consoles because I've got pretty much everything now. I have one of those 5-port phone chargers that can deliver 2.4 amps per port. And so I plugged it in and I'm like, I'm not noticing any of these issues people were talking about. Looked up online, went on Reddit, and people are saying, it seems to be, if you give it a little more juice, if you use like a 2.1 or a 2.4 amp outlet, they're noticing a little less frame rate issues. So it might be that the system throttles down a bit based on the power that it's got. Because some of the devices do that. Some of the single board computers do that. So, from my experience, I'm not experiencing any of that. And that was the only issue people had with it, because the emulation is spot on. And it's really enjoyable. It'll be interesting to see what the homebrew scene does with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious to know when the Sega Genesis Mini will get hacked. My guess is before Halloween.
And I mean, I was that weirdo that went and got the 6-button controllers too. I got a see-through 6-button official one from Retro. Was it Retrobit making it? Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, from EB Games, and from Amazon, I picked up one that wasn't listed as being compatible because it was an older box, but I got the Sega Saturn controller from them.
And it works?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Cool.
And they work at the same button layout and everything. It works great. And the other thing is, because they only come with like 6-foot controllers, these are 10-foot, and they still work with like an extension. So I plugged in a 6-foot extension, so I got a 16-foot cable for my controller, so it can be like anywhere in the living room.
Oh, God.
Yes, and I mean, it does work really well, and I had a lot of fun with it. There is a bit of a novelty, because at this point, most of these games have been in other things too, and that's the thing with all these King of Fighters fighting games, is they've been put in a lot of compilations before.
Yeah, like I know right now you can buy any of the King of Fighters games on PS4 for like $5 each,
and a lot of those titles are also on Switch. So it's like, give us something that people have wanted. You know what I mean? Like when Capcom put out that Capcom beat 'em up bundle, was it last year? I think.
Yeah, last year.
They included 2 titles that had never had, or that there are 2 titles that had never had a U.S. release at all, and had done an English translation of one of them even. So it's like, that is cool. That's what you want. It's like, well, what do we get here? It's like, they're fun, awesome games, and they're worth playing, and everybody likes them, but go to any barcade and they've got a multi-console or a multiplayer that has a lot of these games in it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I'm surprised with is with Arcade 1-Up, they got the Capcom Marvel license, and we got X-Men Children of the Atom, Marvel superheroes, and weirdly the Punisher. None of X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel superheroes versus Street Fighter, none of the Marvel versus Capcoms. If you told me there was a machine that had all the Versus series in it, that thing would sell out within seconds.
Yeah, and they're trying to verify and quantify how many they would sell to make the licensing worth it and that sort of crap. But it's like, you know what? Sometimes it's worth...
Well, especially now that kind of Disney's involved, because now they own the Marvel stuff.
Sometimes it's worth biting the bullet, paying the extra, and then winning the market and being like, hey, look what we're putting out. So then people will buy your second or your third release. Lose money on the first to get them hooked.
I agree.
Which I think is missing in a lot. The people don't want to take risks anymore.
I think the two best ones they've put out is the Turtles one, because it is an actual 4-player machine, and the Mortal Kombat one. And to a lesser extent, the Street Fighter one. Because they could have done one for all the alphas, but the alpha series is not as popular as the main core kind of Street Fighters.
Yeah, true. But yeah, again,
but still.
I wasn't trying to downplay it at all. I'm just thinking, are we starting to muddy the waters a bit?
I think we muddied the waters when we did the Commodore 64.
Which
I'm surprised.
Which I love the fact that they even have on their website firmware update, load any backup of your games, of the thousands of games, onto a USB stick and play them. And I was like, sold. Even if I only end up playing 2 or 3 games, I'm like, this is, in my mind, as far as a mini console, the definitive experience. I never had a Commodore 64. I can now check out any game I want at my leisure whenever I want, and I never have to worry about a system breaking down, like trying to use 30-year-old hardware.
This is true.
So I mean, if we really want to muddy the water, let's wait until Nintendo gives us a Virtual Boy.
All right, so moving on to our last story this week. This one is kind of surprising to me, but as you guys know, certain rights and licenses get torn around between different parties, publishers, movie studios, etc. One of the more notable examples of the last couple of years is the Sean S. Cunningham and Victor Miller's Friday the 13th. That's the reason why the Friday the 13th video game isn't getting any updates, because of the ongoing lawsuit and the kind of rights issues. However, today, or last week rather, if you remember, and I sure hope you do, Wes Craven, he died a couple of years ago, but his infamous creation, Freddy Krueger, you might be wondering, well, what happened to those rights? Well, those rights are finally back in the Craven estate, which now means the character can now be licensed or used by them as they see fit. So that means we might see a new Freddy Krueger movie. That's a possibility. More Freddy Krueger licensing. If you want to put him back in the Mortal Kombat, like you did with Mortal Kombat 9, I'd be okay with that. I think that's actually kind of neat. The fact that it's taken this long to get them back into the Craven Estate's hands, because the last time I can think of, there was Freddy Krueger on the Goldbergs last year with Mr. Knifey Hands, I think was the name of the episode.
Yeah, which was amazing. Then the 2010 movie. Then he was in Mortal Kombat 9 in 2010 or 2009, one or the other. It was on PlayStation 3 and I think was he a PlayStation exclusive character? No, that was Kratos. Yeah,
but still, you could play as Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, they did. It was one of those things. It's hard to keep track of which characters got to which system.
But yeah, just the fact that those licenses, or that is now back in their hands, which means providing the estate wants to handle it properly, we could get a proper reboot. And I'm not taking away from Jackie Earle Haley's performance in the 2010 movie, because I thought he was a good Freddy Krueger. He just wasn't Robert Englund. And that's the most unfair comparison. It's kind of like when the guy who played Jason became more iconic, and that's Kane Hodder when he played it from Part 7 to Jason X. That was by many people considered to be the definitive Jason. And when Ken Kersinger came in Freddy vs. Jason, and then the new guy, Derek Myers, who plays Swamp Thing, was it in the 2009 reboot. You know, what have you got to compare? It's a guy in a mask. But with Freddy Krueger, there's more emotion shows through the performance. Plus, half of the fun of Freddy is what's he going to say next.
It's also even when it got silly, it's the fact that as he's killing him, he's still charming.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Robert Englund was known as a children's television actor when he first got the role. They didn't think he could pull it off.
I mean, prior to that, the only thing he had done of any significance was
V, wasn't it?
And he played the sympathetic alien, like he was the one of the only ones that was like a non-violent entity. So it was sort of almost against type getting cast the way he did. The only thing I can think of as far as somebody as iconic, like you've been a big fan of what was that series there's like Pinhead, but has that been changed once or twice before?
Hellraiser, yeah. There's a new actor in the role now,
and what about
which
Phantasm?
It was terrible. Phantasm was always Angus Scrimm, but he passed away a couple years ago.
Okay, so and the only thing I could think of that would be as iconic that if you changed it, like if they made a new movie, I'd be like, I'm not watching it with a different actor, would be Candyman, like Tony Todd.
Which they are remaking Candyman, and you might be okay with it because it's Jordan Peele doing it, I think.
Yeah, but it depends on who they cast as Candyman.
True.
And for anybody that doesn't know who we're talking about, if you remember the Final Destination movies, he was in I think 3 of them, maybe 4 of them.
Yep. He also played Ben in the 1990 remake of the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead, which was directed by Tom Savini.
And he's got one of those just great like creepy, sinister kind of voices. Like in the Final Destination films, he plays the Undertaker, who may or may not be Death Manifest. If that makes it, remember, like there were sort of those rumors that is
the personification of death.
Yeah, is he the personification of death, giving them a warning? That sort of thing. And he originally had signed on to do 3 other pictures with them, and then they just didn't continue the franchise. But yeah, like he's had those iconic roles, and in Candyman, like because it's a weird case where it's basically just his face, like he doesn't really wear makeup in it or anything, but it's iconic. And if he changed, it would be a dramatically different movie. I think if they do another Nightmare on Elm Street, we're going to enter into uncharted territory, because they're probably not going to go with the gritty dark way, because they've already done that with Jackie Earle Haley, right? Like,
yeah,
they would probably, I think if they did another one, they might go down the nostalgia route and do one more film with Robert Englund if he can do it, because now everybody's riding high on like 80s waves because of it and Stranger Things and everything. I almost feel like the time is right to strike now before he's too old.
Yeah, and he did say recently at a convention, he's like, you know what? Maybe I've got one more in me if we do it soon.
He's got one more in him. He's got one more in him, unless that movie makes $500 million, and then he magically has 2 or 3 more.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'd be all game to see a new Nightmare get made, especially since Adam Goldberg was able to convince Robert to put back on the makeup. I actually remember having a conversation with Adam, and it went along the lines of he was only too happy to do it because I think some member of Robert's family really likes the Goldbergs. Well, cool. So it was a really easy sell.
Yeah.
That's kick ass.
And it's network TV, so it's good money for probably one day of shooting.
Yeah, I mean, I hope before the Goldbergs finishes its run on TV, I would love to see Kane Hodder get his due. Maybe they do a Jason-themed episode, but you really can't get too much better than Freddy. You really can't.
Or how about have Bruce Campbell show up as something in it?
I think that'd be kind of fun to get Bruce Campbell for a day. And speaking of the Goldbergs, it premieres on Wednesday, with a salute to the National Lampoon's Vacation series. I actually got Christy Brinkley back and Anthony Michael Hall. So,
oh wow,
look forward to that.
Yeah, like now that we're getting right back into TV season, like American Horror Story premiered, which, by the way, you have to watch. Looks amazing.
That's my goal tonight.
Yes.
So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the news. As always, you can send us stories to feedback at ThisWeekInGeek.net, or Mike or Alex at ThisWeekInGeek.net, or at ThisWeekInGeek on Twitter. You can always find us there. So anyway, we're going to throw things over to one of Alex's reviews, and we'll be back with the weird, the wacky, the just plain fucked up things that happened on Earth this week. We'll be back right after this.
Cat Quest 2 is the sequel to the 2017 I guess sort of breakout hit that is in the Zelda, traditional top-down view inspired action adventure semi-RPG hybrid game where you play as a cat. Enough said. Amazing. No, but really, moving on here, the sequel is more of everything you loved from the first game. And then expands upon it, in every which way possible. The graphics are a little more polished. The audio is just a little bit higher quality. It's everything you'd want from a sequel, while retaining the same great action RPG aspects of the original. I played the original about it was a little later. It was almost a year after it came out. Due to praise from my younger brother, who was an obsessive fanatic of it, and he kept telling me that the new version of the game or a new sequel was coming out soon, and I should keep my eye out on it. And when I had the opportunity to review it early on Steam, I jumped on it just to try it out, and I can say it's very, very well done. It's going to be coming to basically every platform imaginable, but right now I got a Steam code early, so it's interesting in that. For a game that's an indie title published by P-Cube, it's got a lot of options graphically. I was able to play it. I use an ultra-wide monitor on my podcasting computer, and I have a regular 4K television with my other main gaming computer, and I was able to jump into any resolution I wanted, and it natively scaled for ultra-wide, which is cool, because not a lot of games do that, where either they'll sort of just stretch the graphics, or they won't have that mode, or I'll have bars at the side. It just automatically could detect that I was using an ultra-wide monitor and rendered the screen properly in the right aspect, which is really neat from a title that's a smaller one. Now, as far as gameplay goes, I found it to be more of the same, but that's because the original game had a lot of polish when it came to how it controlled, and you're basically a cat going around the land, on various quests and missions to a la Zelda, I guess, is the best description. See, it's hard to really say much about it because it's just a very solid, good game. There's not really any critiques I can have as far as gameplay glitches or any issues that I found. It's just sort of a well-made, well-rounded action RPG, and if you like the first one, you're going to want to probably pick this up, and it's already on your radar. And if you're not, if this isn't something you've heard of before, or remember maybe it was in the periphery, I would say pick up the first one and pick up this one, as a 1-2 punch, because you're probably going to find you get a fair amount of hours of enjoyment out of it.
What makes you qualified to be a reporter? I'm willing to violate anyone's privacy for my personal gain and then claim with a straight face that the public has a right to know.
By the hand of Zeus, what manner of deviltry is this?
I love fake alien poop day.
All right, guys, welcome back to TWIG, the flagship of stupidity. And, of course, it is time for the weird news that happened around the big blue marble this week. That's my wife in the background. You're just going to have to deal with that.
Tell her to shut up already.
Shut the fuck up! We're good. All right, so let's talk about some of the strangest stories that I gathered from around the worldwide weird this week. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about pig semen. Definitely a highlight of this show of 2019.
Oh yeah, hog spunk. Yeah.
So, continuing the proud tradition of talking about animal ejaculate, a massive explosion a massive semen explosion after blaze hits bull artificial insemination facility. Firefighters forced to dodge, and I quote, projectiles. So a huge fire at a cattle breeding facility in Australia has caused thousands of dollars in damage, and at least 100 cylinders containing bull semen were destroyed.
Wait, so were they dodging skeeter shot?
Yes, because it's weird. This is how it was described. The crews had to be wary of projectiles coming at them while they tackled the blaze. The liquid inside the containers was rapidly expanding, and essentially the liquids of the cryogenic cylinders were just popping off the top, and projectiles were being thrown from the building. So the firefighters went into a defensive mode initially to protect themselves, but because there were also LPG cylinders at the neighboring property, they did a magnificent job. One of the firefighters said he'd never had anything to do with the artificial insemination side of things before during his career. The actual cylinders were worth between $500 and $1,000 per unit, but the semen inside them varies in price. So, if you want to dodge scalding hot, bull spunk, be a firefighter in Australia.
What I'm thinking in my head is it like what are those hot fire rounds that they use where it's like melts the rounds as it hits something to like melt through metal?
Oh, those uranium rounds or whatever,
yeah.
Depleted uranium.
Yeah, it's like it burns. You get this like 3rd degree burn, it burns a hole through your body, and it's like, what happened? And it's like molten hot cum.
Yeah, that's definitely one firefighting story I would not be telling people. How did you get burned? Fuck off.
I was frosted.
It burned so good. So this story actually got sent in to us by a longtime listener and friend of the show, Jen. And, you may have seen in the last little bit, there have been some UFO videos that have been circulating online, through some fairly large outlets. So former Blink-182 frontman Tom DeLonge was in possession of some of these videos, and the U.S. Navy has had to make an unofficial statement on them. So these are gun cameras showing some pretty interesting, we'll say, UFOs. And for those of you that don't know, UFO stands for unidentified flying object. What this actually is, we don't know. But the Navy spokesperson, Joseph Goddisher, told Vice the Navy considers the phenomena depicted in 3 videos that were made public as unidentified. The videos were taken from Navy pilots from their aircraft and were reported in 2017 and 2018. And this isn't the first time that the Navy's had to make official statements. The New York Times has actually ran stories about this, about some Navy pilots who reported some objects off the coast of San Diego back in 2004, stuff like that, as they were showing stuff through the F-18's gun camera. But yeah, it turns out Tom DeLonge actually has his own UFO organization called the To the Stars Academy. One of the videos depicts an object flying quickly over the surface of the water. Now, I've actually seen these videos, and, well, they're interesting. Are they some kind of military craft? That's entirely possible, but you'd think if you're flying exercises in the area, you might be notified. Hey, if you see something, don't say anything, sort of thing. So it's weird. Tom DeLonge has also appeared in and served as executive producer for a new show on the TV channel History called Unidentified: Inside America's UFO Investigation. And I also recently found out, evidently Megan Fox is like a UFO expert as well.
Expert is said loosely.
Well, evidently no, she really knows her shit, which is really weird. I never would have thought that of her. I was listening to Preston and Steve out of Philadelphia this week, and they were talking about the UFO videos, and they tend to contact her whenever they need like a UFO expert of some type. So
because she's a name.
Yeah. A famous name with a famous interest. But still, yeah, looking at these particular gun camera photos, or videos rather, I don't know what they are. And now that we're getting into the era, or we are in the era of HD video, I'm wondering when we're going to eventually, I'm hoping, this is my tinfoil hat moment, I'm hoping when somebody gets 4K video of something really unexplainable, and someone's going to have to say something. Actually, I'll tell you a brief story. One of the most weirdest things I saw, and it wasn't a UFO, actually. Although I can tell... Actually, okay, I'll give you two options here, Alex, since you're my co-host. I can tell you my personal UFO story, or I can tell you the video that actually scared me the most.
How long are the stories? Because you could do both.
Very short, very short.
Do both.
Okay, so back in the early 90s, maybe the mid-90s at the latest, I remember I was up in my room watching Star Trek on VHS. And I just remember watching the TV, and I was just kind of not really paying attention, but I just get this weird urge to look outside. And I see something floating over the tree line right by my house. No more. This thing couldn't have been more than a couple 100 feet in the air, but it was completely silent. But it had a row of red lights on top of it. Now, the best way to describe this thing, and this is going to sound really fucking weird, do you remember seeing Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and the Great Glass Elevator?
Yes.
This is what that thing looked like, at least from what I could see from my window in the dark. But I was like, what the fuck is that? Then, about a half hour later, this tremendous, and I've never heard one of these before in my life, was a sonic boom. Just over my house, just here, boom! Just made this tremendous explosion-like sound, and I ran downstairs to my mom and dad, and I'm like, you guys heard that, right? And they're like, yeah, what was that? I don't know. So I ran outside out to our back porch, and I couldn't see anything. But I distinctly remember looking up at whatever that thing was floating outside the tree line outside of my house. So that was pretty weird. The video that scared me the most, this was a video from Coast to Coast AM. This would have been about 3 or 4 years ago. And a lot of videos shot in Mexico focus some reason around witches or people that can fly or something like that. It was like basically like those Mexican folk tales and whatnot. And this guy's got a fairly high res video of, it shows a Mexican hillside or something, and you can just see this woman floating in the air like she's flying. No visible means of propulsion. This shouldn't happen, sort of thing. And it wasn't the fact that it was a woman flying that disturbed me, because obviously I watch superhero media all the time. This shouldn't faze me, really. But I'm looking at it, and there's just something about the atmosphere around it that was disturbing and menacing. It was a slow menace. Like, you're looking at the thing that should not be.
I thought it was going to be one of those things where, like, she slowly turns towards the camera.
Well, it's so weird because this guy, he's using digital zoom. So you know you're going to get some pixelation from it. But it just, something about it genuinely unnerved me. Because, like I said, it's like I'm looking at something that should not be.
Maybe I'll try to find it and send it to you again.
Well, you know what? Looking at it with another critical eye, I wouldn't mind that. Because, like I said, it was so weird, so strange that I don't know to say what I saw. To go back to the original story of what Tom DeLonge saw, will the government ever fully come out and say, yes, there's fucking aliens? Likely not. Although I'm surprised Trump hasn't said something. But I'm pretty sure if he did, he'd be dead the following day.
Yeah.
So the government, the Illuminati, whatever you believe, the truth is out there. So moving on to my next story, which is probably not as fucked up, although kind of funny, though. So a truck carrying gaming dice spills out onto a highway and spilled a shit ton of dice. The game company Trivium Studios took a turn too sharply, and they spilled out all these gaming dice. The truck was carrying 3 pallets of Chessex 6-sided gaming dice, which are used in some unannounced tabletop game, and approximately half of the truck's load ended up across the highway on I-75 just outside Atlanta. They actually used brooms and shovels to salvage what they could. That's kind of funny, although a company spokesperson said, though unfortunate it happened, nobody got hurt, and we now own an unofficial world record for the world's largest dice roll in history. Considering the average roll of 2 6-sided dice is around 7, and approximately 216,000 dice were rolled, Trivium estimates the roll total to 756,000. The truck was undamaged, having made its saving throw. I just think that's kind of funny. Are you still there?
I am. You caught me just as I was taking a sip.
Okay, so this story, and I'm going to use their words, not mine. So, porn star Bridget the Midget has been arrested for stabbing her boyfriend. Are
you aware of her work?
How do I answer this without incriminating? You know what? Yes.
I will say yes. Yes. I
yes.
would say pretty much yes. Like, are you
Yes.
are you between the ages of? It's like, are you between the ages of 16 and 40 and male? Yes, you would have at least heard in the periphery.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's one of those things. Everybody knows the name, but are you curious enough to hit that search button?
And yeah, especially if you were like between the ages of, I guess, 25 and 40. It was like in the early days of the internet. You're like, who? What? All right, let's see this.
Well, it's weird. I was doing a little bit of research and kind of reading into her. You realize she's only been in the industry since 1999? That's a lot shorter than I thought. I thought she'd been around a lot longer than that.
Sorry, that's a lot shorter.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bridget. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. There's just too many built-in jokes.
She's appeared in more than 50 scenes, approximately. So, whose real name is, I'm not going to dox her. So, when the cops arrived, they discovered her boyfriend with a stab wound. He was taken to a nearby hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. So she was arrested and charged with domestic battery with the use of a deadly weapon, burglary while in possession of a deadly weapon, and assault with a deadly weapon.
Oof.
So, yeah, that's not going to go well. You stabbed a guy! Though,
but was it just a little stab?
You know what I kind of pictured, and this is my inner D&D dork coming out. I pictured a halfling with a dagger doing 1d4 damage. Well, she's like hobbit sized, I guess.
I'm going to hell for this, but was he trying to steal her gold or something? Like,
well, she does have green hair in the picture that I'm looking at.
Oh, good God.
Oh, good grief. So hopefully the boyfriend's okay. Hopefully she gets the help that she hopefully needs, and don't go around stabbing people. It's just not a good sign for you. So anyway, we got one.
Sorry, all we need is like another celebrity to do that, or semi-celebrity, and then we could have like an entire reality show with like her and Dustin Diamond and like.
Okay. Speaking of Dustin Diamond, okay, we didn't talk about this week, but I might as well. We've got a few minutes. So, Peacock, which is the new NBC Universal Streaming Service, which is a fucking stupid name. They're doing a Saved by the Bell reboot. I'll tell you who's not going to be fucking in that. Allegedly, they haven't even talked to Mark Paul Gosselaar yet, but I guarantee you they ain't touching fucking Dustin Diamond. No way, no how. That kid is toxic to whatever he touches. Because
yeah,
sex tapes and fucking stabbings in bars
at Christmas.
Like, she's a ho 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 stab.
I'm just waiting for them to make a Christmas stabbing movie and have him in it.
I want him and Bridget to star in the ultimate buddy cop road movie. Or you know what? I wonder how long until she ends up on like Celebrity Big Brother or something. I don't know. Or what was the one show that had fucking Flavor Flav in it and they were all in like a Big Brother house?
You mean the best show ever created of all time?
What was that called?
Surreal Life.
Yes, I want another Surreal Life with Bridget the Midget, Dustin Diamond.
Because that one, remember, there was like the first couple seasons. The first season I can't remember, but one of them, seasons 2 through 4 were really good. It was like Vanilla Ice and was it Tammy Faye Baker, Ron Jeremy, Tracy Bingham from Baywatch, and then like Bronson Pinchot, and like it was all these weird wash-ups, but like it was back in the early days of the reality shows where they would actually show them, and they didn't know how to like play a persona of themselves, and you could really see it was really who they were.
Yeah, so I've only ever seen like a few episodes here and there, like it was on in the background. I remember more.
Yeah.
What was that show with the guy from Poison?
Oh,
Brett Michaels or
yeah,
whatever? Rock of Love or something?
Yeah, he did that one, but I think he was on a season. Like the Surreal Life had a bunch of spinoffs. They had like, but the big one was they ran for 6 years. I think seasons 2 through 4 were considered the best ones. Like having like anything that has Vanilla Ice on it, and then another season has MC Hammer, has to be amazing.
So yeah, be on the lookout for hopefully something just as equally fucked up. So I guess we'll see what happens with the Saved by the Bell reboot. I think it's supposed to premiere at some point next year when the streaming service launches. Nothing concrete has been laid down, but they've talked about it. So anyway, that's going to do it for the weird news this week. From Bull Seaman to Dustin Diamond to Bridget the Midget, we've had it all. We'll be back after this.
That could actually be a very interesting adult film.
I'm not going to dignify that with an answer.
Think about that. They're all tied together.
No.
Oh, no. I've done it. I've wrecked the internet.
No, Alex, no.
As far back as I can remember, I've always been a fan of Roger Corman's movies. The ultra low budget, nothing's off limits. Let's make any movie we can on a shoestring budget and somehow make it work. Mentality, has inspired so many things like the Troma films, the independent film uprise of the 70s and 80s. He was sort of doing everything ahead of time. We're talking 20, 25 years ahead of everybody else, just saying basically screw you to the Hollywood system and, financing films on, a fifth or a tenth of the budget of a major motion picture and still making them work and making them cult classics. So I've always had a lot of respect for him and just generally pretty much anything he produced, and a lot of the people that worked with him became famous, like people that like Francis Ford Coppola, or he would give starts to the generation of directors like I said, Francis Ford Coppola, or your people like Martin Scorsese. You had actors that got their starts working with him, like you'd have like a De Niro and that sort of thing appearing in little movies that were financed by the Roger Corman, production companies. And a lot of his movies end up in these compilations that are cheapy and usually look like crap. Well, occasionally a company like Olive Films will come out and release a signature edition of one of his films that they've remastered. And in this case, we've got A Bucket of Blood, which is something I've heard of and I've seen in compilations many times. Caught bits and pieces of the film on TV or in other box sets or at friends' houses or on the internet, but I'd never sat through the entire film, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised when I received this deluxe signature edition on Blu-ray from Olive Films to check out, because they have gone and remastered the film from a brand new 4K scan of the original negative. They also included a fair amount of special features, like a Roger Corman interview on this film, a Dick and Laney Miller interview on the film itself, and it's for anybody that doesn't know, I'm a pretty big fan of Dick Miller. He's one of the unsung heroes of character actors out there. And this is a starring vehicle for him from 1959. And it's interesting to see pretty much any Roger Corman film in this, visual fidelity quality, because they have really cleaned it up to the point where you're not dealing with second, third, fourth generation public domain quality copies of the films, and you can really enjoy the films for what they are, considering they were shoestring budget titles that didn't necessarily have the best film stock out there, but this really preserves probably the best experience you're going to get out of it. Now, there's archival interviews, there's audio commentaries with film historians, there are visual essays, a prologue from a German release of the film, a Super 8 digest version, which is basically, back in the day, you could actually get 8mm films for home video use, or for whatever, even if you had like a library or something that wanted to show things. So it's a home video cut edit that would fit on so many 8mm reels that you could have got for home release. So they actually include a scanned copy of the old home video release from way back. It could have been, didn't look at the date on it, but it could have been a release from the 60s or 70s, the film being dated from 1959. So that's a really neat thing that I've never actually seen included on a Blu-ray before, is a home video release that was scanned from an 8mm negative. There's a German theatrical trailer for it, a gallery of newly discovered on-set photography, which is neat when they find these things where some photographer's archive was sitting there, in their basement or in their attic, and they just went, oh yeah, I wonder if these are worth anything, and it's old photos from the production set, which is really neat. The film's in mono, obviously, which sounds perfectly fine. It has a DTS audio track, which is great. It's clear as you're probably going to get it. The dialogue is easy to make out, which is great. It's in the original aspect ratio, which is good too, so none of this full screen cropping that you would have seen for any other home video release in the past. There's optional subtitles if you really want to put them on, or if you need them, which is cool. And it looks glorious in black and white. I'm not going to go into details of the plot of the film, because pretty much the fun of Roger Corman's movies is the freedom that they had, and the ability to put out a lot of content that wasn't mainstream at the time. And I'll just say it's an enjoyable film that you're probably going to have a fun time with. I don't even know really how else to sell it, other than you probably know Roger Corman's movies. You might even know this film, but you haven't seen it in this quality before. So that, in my mind, makes it worth checking out and picking up, because you want to encourage more and more of these off the beaten path releases to get like full-fledged remasterings from 4K negatives. And I really hope that All the Films does more like this again in the future.
And that's the kind of show it has been here on TWIG, the flagship of stupidity. And of course, I could not do the show without my co-host, Alex, the producer. Once again, big thank you to everybody who's reached out over social media over the past week or so involving my father. And actually, one special shout out I got to send to my friend Leslie. Actually sent me an actual card in the mail today expressing condolences. And that's something you don't see a lot from this particular generation. It definitely speaks volumes about not just her character, but the efficiency of our postal system. It got here really, really quick.
There's something that's kind of lost in today's day and age. Is even though you can say things all you want on Facebook or even in person, there's something about getting a physical letter that somebody took the time to write, put postage on, bring to the mail. It really means, not that it means less saying things online or in person. It's just, you can really see when somebody's dedicated.
Absolutely. So I definitely appreciated that. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm going to be taking probably the next 2 weeks off, though you will hear my voice on next week's show, as I will have a review of Gears of War 5 as well as Walking Dead, the definitive edition. So be on the lookout for that. Well, what have we got coming up on the site this week, Alex?
I'm still getting my bearings after traveling for a bit, but there should be maybe a turn of treasure, if not because I'll be doing the show this week. I know we're going to have a another episode syndicated from the Geekcast Radio Network's Top 100 Pro Wrestlers list that I was a part of. I'll be recording another episode of it, I believe, in a couple days. It's really good. It's interesting where people landed because, you have so many lists from different websites that are all affiliated together with us submitting, our top 100, and then it's tabulated and then weighted, and then we sort of react. And only Kevin, like Optimus Solo, knows what the actual list order is. So the rest of us that are reacting, it's like we're hearing it as it comes, which is cool. There's probably going to be Ultra Geek. It all depends on what we're recording, right? And depending on if I can get on it, I'm going to try to see if I can get on Ultra Geek with Steve this week. If not, do you happen to know if we've got a Nerd of the Third again, or is that?
I know this week they're recording history of podcasting, and they're also going to be talking about their 10-year anniversary. I was supposed to be on that show, but under the circumstances, I don't know what the plan is.
If there is one out, we will probably syndicate shortly after they release theirs. Other than that, my big thing will be this weekend doing, taking pictures and covering the Tri-City SuperCon here, and the format for the next show will probably be maybe a little bit of news, but it might be fairly heavily centered on at least the events that happen there. It all depends on what content I get, if I can get interviews and stuff, because you never quite know with a fairly new con, because this is only the second year they've run it. So, and last year it was run during Canadian Thanksgiving, so the problem there wasn't a lot of people going.
Yeah. And
this year it's coming a week earlier.
So, yeah, hopefully that'll go well. I definitely thank you for giving me the chance to kind of get myself together.
Yeah,
and
of course.
I'll come back swinging in about 2 weeks' time. So,
as far as reviews go that I've got coming, it just depends on when they're allowed to be released, and how long it takes me to beat them, because some of them are RPGs. Is I have Ni no Kuni remastered on the PS4, which I want to dig into, because I only got about halfway through the original PS3 release. I've got that. I have Trails of Cold Steel 3, which I've been waiting for a couple of years now, in the Legend of Heroes series on the PS4. So that's 80 hours. It's going to be eaten up. I also have I've got a couple other things on the go. I got a beta access to GeForce Now. That is their version of sort of like Stadia, where they do graphics processing for certain games on the server end and then deliver it to you. So I'm going to try that out and see how it works. So I've got a few weird technology sort of things on the go.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, that's pretty much going to do it for us here at TWIG. So until next time, we have been
Alex.
I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd, saying live for your die hard. And as always, be cool, be kind, be careful. We'll catch you guys next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.